Hey, fasting friends, it's Casey. I'm back from my break and glad to bring you some new information. Today, I want to talk to you about allergies. And if you're like most people, until you have actually faced an allergy, you might be a person that kind of rolls your eyes at people that say, oh, I'm gluten intolerant, or I can't have dairy, or I can't eat eggs, or peanuts, or soy, or fish, you name it. The reality is, allergies are growing big time. In fact, they say that over the past 20 years, food allergies have more than doubled, and some studies say have increased by more than 60%. So that's pretty significant. And it makes you kind of scratch your head and go, why is that? Why are we having all of these allergies? How are these people? I mean, especially me, like I work with people all the time that are in their 90s, and they constantly are telling me, I don't understand these allergies. I've never had an allergy in my life. I ate everything growing up and I never was, sticking to any specific diet, and I've never had an allergy. And the reality is, the way that our farming has developed and evolved over the past 50 years is very, 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 it's a huge proponent to why this is happening. Because number one, farming right now, and I mean, it's always been for profit, but it's also the first purpose was to feed the world. I think right now we're kind of competing in the farming game with feeding the world and making the most profit, and making the most profit is winning. And the reason why I believe that is because if you look at, for instance, wheat and the gluten intolerance idea, people have so much more intolerance to it than ever before, and are having all these reactions. And a lot of it is because farmers are using GMO sources of these wheats and seeds to grow these crops, and they're using things like a really high gluten type flour or wheat, because those have the least amount of bugs and problems, so they can make more profit. Okay, so it's pretty simple when you really peel back the layers of what's happening. Things have changed. Things are not as they once were. We do not farm anyway like we used to. I mean, there are a handful of people that are out there organic farming the way that it ought to be done, but it's very, very few and far between, because of course we live in corporate America and everything is for profit. So again, then let's look at our other major allergen that is in so many things, and that's dairy. So if you were just to go to a grocery store and you were to look at those two allergens alone, dairy and gluten, I guarantee you more than half of what is in every grocery store contains either dairy or gluten. And so that's another reason why we're seeing so much more of it, is because now more than ever, we're consuming dairy and gluten in almost every single meal on the daily. And it's just the excess that is starting to play with our immune systems and cause problems. Then you have to peel back and go, but what about what they're feeding those animals? Because the things that they're feeding the dairy cows and the things that they're feeding these feedlot animals that are our meat sources are corn, and they're GMO. They're all GMO sources, not to mention they're vaccinating them and giving them antibiotics. And all of those things are going into the food that we then later consume, and then we get the side effect of those in our body, affecting our immune system. So there are so many different things that are plaguing us that we don't even realize it comes from the farming source. And then you have to look at, over the last 20 to 30 years, the increase of vaccinations and antibiotics have went up exponentially. So those are also attributors to more allergies. And so the top allergens, I'll just list them really quick. So we know dairy and gluten, or wheat, eggs, nuts, peanuts, shellfish, and soy. So those are the top ones. And then when you're talking about symptoms of allergies, a lot of people think that an allergy is only an allergy if you have a full case of hives and your throat's closing. But the reality is, if you're dealing with a consistent digestive tract that's always gassy and bloated, or you're dealing with diarrhea or constipation, and that's sort of a regular thing for your body, you're having an issue with the food you're eating, and you're not listening to your body well, because those are not things that are supposed to happen. Those are things that are a side effect of like, well, that didn't settle well, or that wasn't the right food, or maybe I should have just avoided that altogether. The other symptoms that are really textbook for allergies are things like swelling in your tongue, mouth, face, low blood pressure, difficulty breathing, vomiting, hives, like I said, itchy rashes, respiratory response. So if you're somebody that deals with like chronic drippy nose, sore throats, you get sinus infections often, you cough a lot, those are all signs that your body is not tolerating something that you're eating. And the thing that's so crazy is so often we see like an issue, like we might get a rash, or we might have some sort of response, and we don't immediately think it's what I ate. We think of like, oh, what did I touch to my body that made this happen? And that's hardly ever the case. I mean, so much of what we're dealing with is what we've put in our mouths. So it's just important to know that. So not knowing if you have an allergy or not, you're probably safe to just be wise and listen to your body. But if you have had any of those types of symptoms, or like I said, you have this digestive issue on the regular, you need to start keeping something like a Benadryl on hand for in case your body just all of a sudden that scale tips so far that it says, I can't deal with this anymore, and you have an anaphylactic response. And one of my reasons for bringing this up, you guys, is because as I was getting ready to go on our trip, I decided that for the ease of traveling, I was going to have us have sandwiches one of the days on our trip down. So I bought organic Dave's bread and nitrate-free deli meat, vegetables and whatnot, and made us sandwiches. And as you know, I typically eat like low-carb keto. And so I had not been eating gluten really at all. Like on an occasion, like once maybe a month, I would eat something that had gluten, but I hadn't been. So anyhow, so we make these sandwiches. I eat them, and I literally within 10 minutes broke out in hives, like covering my entire body. I had prickly pain all over my mouth. My tongue swelled up. My cheeks were like an inch thick. I mean, it was insane. Like I had the craziest allergic response, and started having like the having to clear my throat, like my throat was going to close. And that day I had not consumed any dairy whatsoever. And so I immediately thought, okay, wow, my body does like really not want gluten at all. So I just decided not only was I going to completely from that point forward avoid all gluten altogether, I was also going to avoid dairy, because I know that dairy does have they say 80% of people have some form of intolerance to dairy, because it's just not natural for us to consume a lot of it, and consume it really after childhood. So anyhow, so I went ahead and I got some Benadryl because I had to. I was just dying. I was in so much pain and itching everywhere, and got that dealt with, and I'm totally better now. But it just made me realize, like, I wanted to bring this up because I had never really had any issues that I knew of besides the digestive, like not feeling so cool after eating things like that, to where I had that kind of response, and it was really eye-opening. And so I just wanted to share that because, you might have something like that happen, or your child might have something like that happen, and it's alarming. So it's good to know what to do. If you have an allergy response, you need to get some Benadryl immediately. Obviously, if you feel like your throat's closing, you just need to go to the ER and have them help you. But it is good to keep those things on hand just in case. But let's talk about what are solutions that we can do to prevent allergies or to deal with them when we already have them. So obviously, I'm a huge fan of fasting, and fasting is one of the best ways for your body to cleanse and detox. And so when you have an allergy, your body is responding and it's freaking out because it knows this is not okay. This is not something I should have. And it's trying to, throw all these alarms so that I got to change. I got to do something totally different. And so that is one thing. But you have to go, okay, so since I know that I'm fasting and I'm cleaning this all out, what do I do though when I start to eat again? Well, number one, eliminating everything that was listed as an allergen and just saying, they call it an elimination diet. So like, I'm going to eat nothing that contains an allergen. So I will eat nothing that contains eggs, dairy, gluten, nuts, peanuts, shellfish, or soy. If you avoid all allergens, and then you just go, I can only eat other foods than those, and you keep track of it, you should do that for at least 1 week. Avoid absolutely all allergens. In fact, I propose you wait for 2 weeks, because in reality, it takes 2 to 3 weeks for dairy to fully get out of your system, and 1 to 2 weeks for gluten. So try 2 weeks of absolutely no allergens in your diet. And then you can test yourself out by adding one thing at a time for a week. So let's say you really badly want to see if you're okay with dairy, and you're like, I just want to see if I can have dairy again. So then try having dairy a little bit, only a little bit, and make sure it's organic, and do that for a week straight. And keep track in a journal what your body response is like. So you can know, like, is this something that I'm okay with, or am I starting to see these problems creep back up? Because it's really important to be in tune with that. You do the same for everything. Obviously, you can go in and have an allergy panel done. I'm actually going to be having that done in about a week, because I want to know for sure everything that I'm allergic to so I can try to avoid it. And part of the reason too, you guys, is like I mentioned earlier, antibiotics. I had to be on antibiotics because I was dumb and blind and only followed what my doctor told me to do. And I was on antibiotics for almost 1.5 years because they thought I had Lyme's disease. And turns out I never had Lyme's disease. And I went through 1.5 years of antibiotics that destroyed my gut flora. And when you have a really unhealthy gut, your immune system is in your gut. And it's basically you kill all of your soldiers when you have a poor immune system, and your body is like defenseless. It can't do anything to help you and to heal you. So it's so important that you start depositing foods that will promote good gut health. So fermented foods are what will do that. We talked about this in previous videos, but things like kimchi and sauerkraut, those are 2 really good, quick probiotic sources that you can have. And then prebiotics like bananas and other things that will give your probiotics food. So it's important to do those as well. So make sure that you are including fasting in your day. Honestly, all of us, as I've mentioned before, all of us should be doing some form of fasting, at the very least intermittent fasting. And you want to have it at the shortest window you would ever want to have for your fast would be 13 hours. That's the absolute bare bones minimum. And that's just, okay, you're like a child. Try to go beyond 13 and push yourself to getting a regular 16 to 18 hour fast a day. Your body's going to be so much healthier. Your immune system can respond and do the autophagy cleanup that it needs to, especially if you're dealing with an allergy and you've had all this inflammation attack your body. That will help so much if you can let your digestive system rest so your immune system can go to repairing. If you have further questions, please put them in the comments below. And glad to be back. Hope you're well. And I hope you're not suffering from an allergy. But if you are, you know what to do. Take care, guys.